Hello, everybody. So we're going to take a little change from HR tech into content recommendation. Now, content recommendation and personalization are two of the words that I think are being used most frequently in the least accurate way. So I'm going to try to set the record a little bit straight and also talk about what Bibblio is doing. So long story short, good content recommendation is essential now in a world where there's too much content. In fact, someone like Joe Ito from MIT has gone so far to say that we now live in a world where discovery is more important than delivery. I think we all assume that when we take our smartphone, we open up whatever content will be delivered seamlessly to us, but it does not, for the content owners, solve the problem of matching the right content to the right user. And many publishers and media companies face exactly this problem. They get people coming from many different sources, entering into their world across thousands of different content items. And how do you optimize this at scale? Effectively, you need an engine. Now, the problem is that the people who've been best at doing this are the aggregators. So the majority of ad money is flowing towards, in particular, Google and Facebook, but also newer entrants into the market. As a result of that, publishing has started a flight to higher ground, as we call it. They've begun to realize that as long as they're reliant on aggregators for their traffic and they're reliant on programmatic ad networks for their revenue, they're in a very perilous strategic position. As a result of that, in particular in the higher end of the market, so think about special interest publishing, tech, food, travel, health, but also all the way up to kind of B2B and professional publishing, revenue models are shifting dramatically. People are beginning to build revenue streams around sponsored and branded content, around e-commerce and affiliate, and around data capture, lead generation, almost acting as a content agency for the brand and partners that they work with. And this is exactly where Bibblio comes in. We help them navigate that shift, help give them a technology that lets them be competitive in that world. Now, as a result of that, we basically have come to the conclusion that we can come out and talk to the world about clever AI and algorithms, et cetera, but actually at the end of the day, our customers want to know what can they do with Bibblio. So we packaged it into three things. We call it circulation. So effectively take your editorial content and get more out of what you've already got. We sort of jokingly say the lowest hanging fruit is to take the users you're already getting and the content you already have and get more out of it. But we also, and very importantly, solve the middle bit of it. We let publishers promote their own revenue-generating content, their own commercial content. So unlike a Taboola or Outbrain or some of the other sort of native ad networks and recommendation engines that you might have heard about, we operate solely on the publisher or media or content owner's own premise. They have full control, full transparency. We don't stick ads into their units. They can do what they want. And then last but not least, this year, we've launched our syndication project, which also seamlessly lets you recommend content from across multiple different platforms. Really, at the end of the day, think of a recommendation engine. The outcome of that is a glorified hyperlink, right? When the user clicks, we just redirect them to whatever content we presented them to. So it's a very generalizable technology that can sit in that intersection between content and user. Underneath that, of course, there's a lot of technology and a lot of algorithms. I'm not going to go too much into detail with that today because we don't have time for that, but broadly, content recommendations fall into three spaces. It's content-based recommendations, so you read the articles. We have an NLP engine that understands the content, matches that to each other with a very high level of accuracy. But then you also have these behavior-based models, so you effectively look at what content is working and not working, and you re-rank that. And then, of course, we've got personalization. I should say personalization is not necessarily the best solution in every case. Actually, we look much more at what are the different goals you're trying to promote as a content owner, and then we select the algorithms and products that fit those different goals. Also in the user-based space or personalization space, I don't know if some of you were here yesterday, but we're working towards a world where all of that is effectively done on the device. So get away from a cloud-based approach to personalization with the privacy issues and latency issues that come with that into a world where that can be done on the device. People like Apple have sort of pioneered this space, but we think there's ample room for a service provider in the coming years. Now, what does that look like when you come to a site? So I've just sort of created a quick video that'll show you a couple of examples here. But the user coming to a certain site or a certain app will never know that it was Bibblio that was involved. In effect, they're just interacting with the content on the page, and we're just a smart layer that finds the right content for that user in that particular situations. Of course, you can also use Bibblio to power things like feeds or swipes or whatever you want. So the units are still kind of the main bulk of what we do, but more and more we're looking at these kind of new interaction mechanisms as well. So UX is an important part of our work because UX drives a lot of performance. Now, there we go. I don't know why it's sort of cutting out all of the top bits, but I hope you can live with that. So what do we really offer a content owner? Well, we offer a plug-and-play solution into some of the smartest sort of content recommendation technology in the world. It puts you up there with the big tech giants without having to invest. Someone like Netflix spends almost $250 million a year on their personalization engine and their content recommendation stack. We can effectively deliver it as a service. So as a publisher on a website, you drop a little tag, and actually you've got plug-and-play recommendations. We take care of the whole pipeline back and forwards. And all you do is put a little tag on the page, and off you go. And as I said, we've been fortunate enough to then start working. I should say I'm a bit flattered to be on this stage, but because we're a little bit earlier stage than a lot of the people that you've been listening to here, but hopefully we can justify that. You can say one of the things we've been really excited to see is the expansion scenarios that we see. So it's very often that we get started working with a group because a product owner or a tech person identifies this need and sort of asks the question, should we really be building all of this ourselves? We don't have the talent, we don't have the resource, and actually there's lots of other priorities. So services are a really good sort of option in this scenario. And what we've seen is that expansion then starts to take place. So we get in on 2 websites, and then like 2 months later, we're on 10 websites, and then 2 months later, they actually have 3 different widgets on the page that does 3 different types of recommendations. We're a volume-based SaaS, so all of that gives us more revenue over time. Now, actually, since I submitted these slides 2 days ago, we've crossed the 1,000 site mark or the 1,000 application mark, so that's a cool little sort of milestone for us. We also served over 100 million users for the first time in May. This year, we've been growing the business at about 20% month on month and actually accelerating. It's coming from a relatively small base, I should say, so to have that in mind. But more encouragingly, we've, for the first 6 months of this year, have seen quite significant net positive MRR churn every month. So we've got very low churn to begin with, about sort of 1%, but then actually we see all of these clients that we have started to get in continue to upgrade. And we're kind of growing into this market very, very quickly. So I should say the content market as a whole is expected to grow about $300 billion over the next 5 years. But specialized within us, sort of from addressable market, our market's growing about 40% a year at the moment. And we're effectively on a path to want to capture about 10% of that market by 2024. And importantly, from all the reports, we know that the service segment of this market is what's going to win. And in particular, we think the edge-based service is going to win in the long run. So that's what we're building out. And longer run, you could say, geez, I don't know what that's done either. But anyway, longer run, content owners are really not just publishers and media companies. We already work with councils, with organizations, with brands that more and more are beginning to think of themselves as publishers, right? Because if content is what's going to win in the future, actually people like Red Bull and Coca-Cola and the NHS in the UK, the health service, have the same problems. How do we match the right content to the right user and let them discover that and have the best experience? So in the long run, it's a very generalizable technology. We think of it a little bit like search as a service, which is now dominating. We think there's a 3 to 5 year curve where that's going to be the same for recommendations. So thank you very much for listening, and have a lovely rest of the conference.